This is the Bitcoin chart going back a few years, and I'm using the Mt. Gox exchange on the daily term time frame. Like always, everything is within your own risk, own reward. And this was in at $2.33 after making a run to about 30. 15x down. Now, how many altcoins of not so great liquidity compared to today's Bitcoin prices do you see having moves of 15x down and still being higher from where it was on a breakout point? Because when Bitcoin broke out back then, it was $0.0075. And this was April of 2011. April of 2011, it goes from $0.0075 and making it again close to 30. I mean, over 40x gain. Don't expect Bitcoin in a few months to make any 40x gains ever again. But that was the early infancy stages of such. And as time goes on, its volatility, of course, will diminish. And it's been doing such today, and it's got a lot to diminish to be what people would call a stable currency. But as the life cycles move on, if I was told back then, well, you don't know as well back then as I do today about buying low, selling high, but you would have been liking buying at $5. And heck, when it was $7, just based on thinking that way, it was cheap. There will be very small language of yada yada, probably only going to use it here. But I was calling this totally that of a shit coin, not Bitcoin. Now, of course, when I look at if I understood the binary on it, how the payment system works, and how it is like a operating system for a computer or a word processing software, any major computer software that just works. That's pretty much what you have. Oh, okay. I would probably think a little bit differently also. You talk about casino games, whether it be betting on sports, whether it be play poker, whether it be betting the market. A code is a code. You're trying to make profit. If you play the stock market, Forex market, at least that would have been the thinking then. I wasn't thinking about trading this market, but I knew it was moving, and I'm like, I probably could trade this. That stayed in the back of my mind this entire time since its infancy stages. And because I was subscribed to channels like Da Vinci J and Brother John F, and I was watching Max Kaiser now and again, I was aware of the whole Bitcoin situation. Now, as time moves on, we can see buying at this level worked out well. And of course, buying up here, just holding this down and ensuring your codes, I guess, were not in Mt. Gox, at least the majority of them, because of course this exchange had problems that would come thereafter. But I'm the type of person that would have a good time to say, okay, Casino Rama has $300 poker tournaments every few weeks. Yeah, I know. Want to play one every now and again? Yeah, sure, why not? And I look at it as in, well, instead of doing a venture of that nature, why not take the same amount and just play a game and make it your own homemade poker tournament? For if you put in, say, well, the tournament's 300, if you put 300 in this and you could successfully turn it into whatever, well, that's what your prize would be. When I look at this here, which is the World Series of Poker payout, this was the 2015 projected prize, a little old, but they're practically the same every year. And first place was about $8 million, with the minimum prize being 15. The buy-in, $10,000. So therefore, if you get the minimum prize, then you would get about a 50% return. If you finished 100th, you'd get 5 times back. And when I had about pretty much a small poker size bet available, a bit bigger tournament than 300, however, and I look at what I have already cashed out so far, mostly, of course, via silver and using it as real cash, I would be placed in the 10th to 12th category, meaning if you finished and making 550,000, that means you would have gotten back 55 times, which is what I have spent via those measures from my starting situation. So as I look at the market, and I'm now going to go back to the Bitcoin chart, I have already done very well to the point that I've always wanted to play the main event. Not really so much anymore, not that one anyway. And I always wanted to dream about making the final table and how difficult that is. Well, financially speaking, I could cash out everything and get like a second place payout, but that 8 million prize, or better put, that of 8,000 times your investment back. You can do better than that in this game because it's not infinite. The game will let you know how large it can get, because if you become too big of a player, your game will have no choice but to change. But that, to me, is just obvious. But the amount that you can turn over time, that literally, one to put $300 in at this price at $4.94, then do decent at trading the market, then do decent at when they withdraw their funds. They never withdraw more than 5%. As far as, I mean, it's different when you buy like US dollars or whatever to buy it back. That doesn't count. But as far as using it for getting it out of the crypto game, and if you could do that, then by all means, if you started then you could very easily be worth 9 figures today. There's nothing stopping you. If the game can venture on that long, you can play the game well enough to be able to do so awesome. And the price just happens to go up, which of course $8 were today at around 10 grand. Okay, so that's 1,000 times higher from whatever Bitcoin you had, plus the amount that you traded positively, going long here, short here, selling here, and all that type of fun stuff. But as time went on, I never really believed it could do it. But if I had the mindset of, well, if it does it well enough for a little while, you could guarantee, like at this stage here, you can't lose if you already started then, because you've already taken, if you started with 300, I'm hoping you've taken out at least $1,000, at least, at this stage, as far as profit taking, especially if you've done well trading everything else. But you could just be trading Bitcoin against the dollar on the exchange, and that's all you do. And then back and forth, you're able to pick away some moves. Although when this is going on, you're just going to be forced with what you sold. Like, oh, I'm happy to sell at 24. Okay, I got the 21 maybe. Oh, I'm happy to sell at, say, 20 or 30. I did not get the 27, we'll say. Didn't get that one. And then, of course, you're like, okay, just going to withdraw some of that now. And then at that stage, you're playing the game, and ooh, even more gains. Some of the stuff you sold up here. And on my buy low, sell high strategy, that meant everything that you sold at $90 north was buyable back. Even though you could have bought back at 60 profitably, no, you're looking to get that back around 40 something. But whatever. The whole point is, if I were to think of the game to that level, with the poker mindset, that every time I cash further, using this description of the World Series of Poker, I've already finished pretty much at the final table, given that I have done better than this figure, which is that of, well, 55 times more. I've already cashed out more than that. But had this been a case where I got in at this time, it would have worked out very, very well. And then moves like this occur. See, with altcoins, when you see stuff like this happen, that's the earlier stages, that's the less liquidity. You're not going to see Bitcoin probably ever again have like a 7x gain in 2 or 3 months. I don't think you'll ever see that. But back then you could. And some of the other coins today, you can't. And of course, this was the Mt. Gox situation. Some of this price at the time overinflated, sure. But that's because the more Wall Streetish like maneuvers will state, quote unquote, based on adding Bitcoins that didn't exist to the market. I think margins and stuff like that caused the big run up much higher than it should have, and then of course this fall. And as we move this chart to today, with all of these wild moves that have occurred throughout the years, I'm thinking the same thing even today. That as long as this market can stay and hold above 3,000 to 1,000, then this is for several years, by the way, for 4 years, like, or 5 years. You can see like 2012 to here. If I can run like the length of this and be able to just maneuver in and out of markets, to me, as a trader, the profitability can be quite large. And I really do say this 1,000 because when you look at a chart as it's played out, any major correction, those would deem to be that of the very end of Bitcoin. Would be possibly very wrong, because this is a major, major, major level, especially when I look at this logarithmically. And I would imagine if it were to happen, and I don't think it will, but if it does, then it would probably have a very sudden final move. Maybe this 3,000 area. Months from now, probably, even still after. Even maybe 4,000, whichever. It just has a huge move down to this over like a day, 2 or 3. And then within an hour or two, it's already up 40%, up to like 15. Within the many hours after that, we'd probably be back over 2 to 3,000. I would think if it does, it would do something like that, like a flash crash, I guess is the word I'm looking for, as another way of putting it. But when you look at the chart in this perspective, that is mathematically possible. Now, going back to the point where if you start with an X amount and you do very well because of factors of increasing your base currency amount, and in most cases this is Bitcoin, and Ethereum is common as well if that's your main one. And I've talked about ways of doing it with Litecoin on this channel, or for that matter, any other coin as your main one, where you're trying to increase basically your overall crypto portfolio value. So one way of always looking at it is, what is your worth valued in Bitcoin? And what is that Bitcoin valued in fiat currency? Those are the two ways I look at it. But when you are able to encounter these types of back and forth movements over a long, significant period of time, the profitability that can be had, I think, is quite substantial. And yeah, again, going on the whole point, you start with 300. If you have a value, say if your portfolio does well, prices go up, your trading it does well, and you're worth 1,800. Well, maybe you can pull your original 3 out. But if you do that, it's over 10%. So you don't do much at all. Oh, and it goes up to like, say, 4,000. Okay, maybe you do pull 300 out now. Market conditions go up and you're at 15,000. Well, now you're buying a hardware wallet maybe. And you're buying bits and pieces here and there. And as values go way up, then you realize, oh my goodness, 300 is this percent of my portfolio now. That's like easy to spend. And then when you pull, this is what my philosophy, and then pulling out there, then after bits and pieces at a time, especially when you move it into things like, well, to me, silver is the most safest asset long term, especially on the, and only on the physical, tangible side. I like the 999, but scraps and sterling silver of its forms are good. And that's the protectionary measures for the bad case scenarios if things go wrong. And that's why if something like this happens, then it does. One way I look at trading, and any type of hodlers for that matter, is exactly the same case, is you are almost like an MMA, UFC fighter. They are going to take some shots to the face that are going to be very, very devastating. You're going to see some just red bruises everywhere, some blood. It's going to be nasty. But that's going to have to happen. And when you have markets go from 20,000 down to 6,000, that's like taking a shot in the face. Just a small one. But these great, especially the great UFC fighters, will look at you like you're the top dog in the business. And the top dogs have taken some decent shots in the game. That you come out on top. And when you have these moves, that's like winning a heavyweight championship fight. That's the philosophy in how I look at it. Because you know as your trader, your portfolio, oh, it just went up 17 times over this whichever somewhat short period, but intermediate period of time. And then it just lost more than half. Hey, maybe in some cases it loses 2/3. I mean, if Bitcoin goes down here, my portfolio is going to get destroyed as far as its X amount down. It's going to be a lot, Y amount higher from my original start. And I would be expecting that the amount of BTC that I own to be much higher at this stage than it is today, as I keep on trading in and out of the markets. That's, of course, my expectation. That's my responsibility as a trader to get that done. And like I state with these markets, it's going to do what it's going to do. But when you look back at it, even in here, you're like saying at this stage, you're kicking ass. I mean, it's awesome. You got in back at the $5 days, even when I was showing you at $1 or $2, or whatever below this resistance. And you happen to play through this. And you've seen your portfolio go from, well, what Bitcoin prices go from 15 to 200, and you outperform the market on top of that. Even if you sell some here and there, you got well better than 10, 15 times from where it would have been. And then you were just loving the fact maybe back here that you sold some and then you were able to get like 20% more Bitcoin. And then I don't think you were able to trade any other coins back then. I think it was only Bitcoin to a fiat currency. However, maybe I could be wrong. Litecoin? I don't know. Anyway, the bottom line is you have that monstrous kind of gain. And you're saying, oh my goodness, if this thing goes back to like $12, I'm like so devastated. And you see how it could. It had a big gain and, well, it didn't. And it never did. So maybe it comes back down to 1,000. And maybe it never will. Maybe it'll try to go to 1,000, but find support at some other level like 2,500 upwards to about 5,000. And maybe these are the lows and they're in at 6,000. Thank you for tuning in and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.